More about this now, and welcome in political analyst and host of Mark Halperin's Focus Group, the man himself, Mark Halperin. Also with us, co-host of Spicer and Company right here on Newsmax TV at 6 p.m. every weeknight is Sean Spicer. Mark and Sean, great to see you both. All right, a warning to everybody at home, it's about to get wonky. You might want to take a seat, get out some notes, because we're going to break all this down. And normally with Mark, we do the data that matter and the data that don't. But today we're going to talk about the dates that matter and the dates that don't as it relates to the Electoral College. All right, so let's put up the important dates on the screen here. The Safe Harbor Day has already passed, of course. So has the Electoral College vote. So let's start there. And Mark, you know, this has kind of been a great debate here on this show the last couple of days. Where are we? Is he the president-elect? Is he not the president-elect? And how important was that vote this week?
Well, president-elect, as we pointed out here and others have pointed out, is not something that's in the Constitution. It's not an official title. It's something that's developed over the years. Certainly for Mitch McConnell and a few other Republicans in Washington, the votes by the Electoral College in the 50 states in the district meant something. But it's not final. It's not official until they're counted by the president of the Senate, Mike Pence, coming up in January. So for those in terms of interested in procedure, for those hoping that something intervenes, some developments occur that change the trajectory of the outcome, that's the date to look at.
Yeah, and the thing that's interesting yesterday, Sean, about seeing Mitch McConnell do this, you know, congratulation of Joe Biden, is a guy like Mitch McConnell obviously probably knows more about procedure and rules and the stuff that's not really enumerated in the Constitution in these statutes than anybody else. And we can think back on what happened with Harry Reid and undermining the norms for the, the cloture votes and things like that. And that's why this stuff is important. But I wanted you to kind of lay out why it's important that we hear this stuff, but at the same time, why it's unlikely that it's going to change the outcome.
Well, look, I mean, the president's case, not just the president, the Texas case that the president signed on to that went to the Supreme Court was rejected out of hand. I think you need some big moment to happen. So the only other moment, as Rob just pointed out as he walked people through that timeline, was January 6th, when the House and the Senate meet in that joint session to count the electors that the states have sent them. As he mentioned, one member from the House and one member from the Senate have to, in writing, make known what their concerns are. Then the House is adjourned to their separate chambers and debate it. But at the end of the day, Nancy Pelosi still enjoys and controls the majority of the House of Representatives. So, you know, I don't mean to be pessimistic, but you can't think of a scenario where Nancy Pelosi, who has done nothing to help this president over 4 years, is suddenly going to help get him the votes in the House of Representatives. So barring some massive intervening moment, right, that the Supreme Court takes up something, you look at the timeline and say, okay, if it goes to the House and the Senate, okay, is controlled by Republicans. You could see a scenario there. But I just don't see a scenario where Nancy Pelosi, who's been completely obstinate to every agenda item that the president has put forward over the past 4 years, suddenly says, you know what, I'm going to allow my members to vote to give Donald Trump 4 more years in the White House and take this away for Joe Biden. I mean, she has made her hatred towards Trump very well known. And so unless there's some intervening Supreme Court action of some that I'm unaware of, then I don't see a scenario in which even if a bunch of the Republican members get up, you're just delaying the inevitable, right? And so, again, I'm not trying to be pessimistic about it. I think realistically, here's the scenario, here's the timeline, here's the only arrow left in the quiver, if you will, for Republican members who want to see Donald Trump. And I just don't see a scenario where they might be able to delay this and have them go back to their chambers. But Pelosi and her members are going to do this. Like, this is a woman who everyone campaigned and said she wasn't going to be speaker, and then she twisted enough arms to make them all vote for her for speaker. She knows how to count votes. She knows how to get her way and control the chamber that she's in the majority of.
Yeah, she always seems to have one more trick up her sleeve. And you know, the analogy that I kind of thought of, Mark, here is like a space shuttle launch, right? You know, maybe the Safe Harbor Day is the main ignition, and then but at this point the shuttle has taken off, and maybe the solid rocket boosters fall off as another stage here. But you know, the flight is happening. It's in motion. It may or may not make it to space. But unless something, really major happens, that's the likely scenario, right?
Yeah, I mean, Mitch McConnell made clear yesterday to his members that he doesn't want any of them to be that one senator, as Sean mentioned, who needs to ask in writing for a given state's electoral votes to be reconsidered. He doesn't want to put Republican senators, particularly those up for re-election in 2 years, in a tough position. You don't want to be there saying, well, the president wants you to vote this way on this high-profile vote. Now, they'll all take heed as a group if none of them step forward. Kelly Loeffler is one people are talking about now, but None of them have stepped forward and said they want to do it, and McConnell wants to keep it that way. So if that happens, if he holds his members in line, none of them join those House members who have already said that they will be amongst those who object, then this process could be anticlimactic as much as we're building it up now because of the possibilities of something different. Very anticlimactic. It could take less than an hour. Mike Pence would simply acknowledge as the envelopes are opened what the electoral vote tally is, and that would be that.
And that's where, we don't want to be, is have people expect that this is going to be some catastrophic, monumental moment, and then it's like what Mark says, where it's very formulaic and all kind of played out. And
it's like Geraldo opening the safe, John.
and very well, and we don't want it to be like that. Now that said, Sean, what's also important too is that we focus on what's happening, in groups like the Amistad Project, which we'll talk about in a second. They're having these public hearings because what I've said before, it's not just about what happened in 2020, but it's about future elections. And even some of those Trump voters, like the one I referenced at the first hour, quoted in the AP piece, the gentleman from Pennsylvania, they can believe that the election was stolen or it was fraudulent enough, but they also know this is still America, and we're not going to fight a civil war over this election. That was for you, Sean. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I mean, I think, again, that's why, look, it's good that they're continuing to do this, obviously, in terms of trying to expose anything that may have happened this past election, but also to ensure the protection of 2022, 2024, 2050, 2052. I mean, there is fraud that occurred. We know that. We've heard these anecdotal stories, and the question is, the more we can root out, the better. The more we can have integrity in our future votes, the better. So I think that this is definitely important. But the Trump campaign legal team in particular, need to be working in tandem with this because, again, they need to find something that they can get the Supreme Court to latch onto if there's any hope aside from that January 6th date.
Yeah, and as was the case with Harry Reid and the cloture vote in politics, just like in physics, there's always an equal and opposite reaction. And I think a lot of those Republicans know they could find themselves in this scenario down the road, and undoing these types of things, Mark, will have those consequences.
It's a big step. Now, as you pointed out, people take big steps. People do things that they may end up regretting. They may escalate the conflict in a way that is a clear escalation. In this case, again, Sean's pointed out the key fact. Nancy Pelosi doesn't have to escalate anything. Whatever the Republicans could do, you could have every Republican senator, including Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins and Mitt Romney, all on board to say, no, the president deserves the electoral votes of Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Arizona. And even if that happened, Nancy Pelosi could stop it.
Yeah. And, one of the things I think everybody's been.
One quick point,
Go ahead,
Sean, if I may. They've got to, as Mark said, you've got to get a House and a Senate member to do this. But the media is going to cry about this process and talk about how Trump's behaving and other Republicans. But let's remember, it happened in 2017. Yep. It happened in 2004. It happened in 2001. The Democrats have done this over and over again. No one seemed to have a problem with it then. And so the question is, make sure that we keep the media in check. They never had a problem in 2004 and in all these other years when things like that occurred.
To the contrary.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I know we've talked to a lot.
The Washington Post, the New York Times.
Yeah, there was a Politico report last week that we mentioned, and Sean, you probably know very well about this. There was a lot of harassment of Trump electors the last time around, physical threats, all kinds of stuff, and this has not happened to the Biden electors, despite the highly contentious nature of that. And that shows you the difference between the two sides, I think, as well. Yes. Also, Mark, something I know you've been talking about a lot too, kind of the lack of coverage about this. It was very interesting today to hear Senator Ron Johnson talk about Matt Taibbi from Rolling Stone, and using him as an example. But he has, Matt Taibbi, Ron Johnson talked about this today, how he has talked about how the press has failed to cover so much of this stuff in a fair way. So that was kind of an interesting meeting of the minds there. Ron Johnson, maybe a closet Matt Taibbi fan. Interesting stuff. Great stuff from you guys as well, Mark and Sean. Thanks so much. We'll see you both later.
Thank you, John.
We'll see Sean later today at 6 p.m. And Mark, he's around a lot, all the time. We'll see him on the focus group. Great to have you both. All right, as we mentioned, the Amistad Project right now, which is the Amistad Project, part of the Thomas More Society, they are demanding the preservation of evidence in 5 key swing states. The group and its director, the man you see right here, the former Attorney General of Kansas, Philip Klein, they're holding a news conference right now. Our own Emerald Robinson is there. They're looking at the influence of dark money in the 2020 election. Stay tuned. We'll have an update on that coming up.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.